As I'm sure many of you are aware, China is home to an absolutely incredible collection of wooden roller coasters, whether they be the GCI or Gravity Group variety. They do have decent quantity, 15 to be exact, but the quality is really where they shine. 14 of the 15 are top tier Woodies in my opinion. Let me repeat that, 14 out of 15. That means that 93% of them are elite, but of course that claim is subjective because that's just what I think. Something that I've noticed a lot is that yeah, we know about the great collection, but beyond that, the details about each individual coaster often get lost in the shuffle and we have a hard time deciphering between them. I even fell into that camp before researching this because I myself haven't gone to China. I'm just relaying all the information we do know and the opinions of people that have written them. So with that said, today we're going to go through 5 more Chinese wooden coaster layouts in part 2 of this 3-part series. Before we get started though, I'm really usually not one to beg for likes, but this video took an absolutely insane amount of research and time to go through all the little details, so it'd be greatly appreciated that if you enjoyed the video, drop a like because it helps with the YouTube algorithm so much. Now enough of me rambling, the first coaster we're going to go over is Jungle Dragon at Happy Valley Chongqing. The design was a 2017 collaboration between GCI and Skyline Design, which you may remember from part 1 is indeed a subsidiary of Skyline Attractions. As you probably would expect, and I probably don't even need to say, Jungle Dragon uses the classic Millennium Flyer trains that can be found on 21 out of the 22 operating GCIs worldwide. As for the stats, Jungle Dragon is 3,957 feet or 1,206 meters in length, features a 99 foot or 30 meter drop, and it travels 55 miles per hour or 89 kilometers per hour. It also has a capacity of 850 riders per hour, but that's probably irrelevant because, come on. This is China, you know they aren't actually hitting that. Something interesting about Jungle Dragon is that it's actually located elevated up on a hill, so that's not only going to add some great terrain to the ride, but it's also going to make the ride look much more imposing as you just see that wooden structure that was already pretty decently sized, just towering over you like Oscar's Wacky Taxi over Vapor Trail. And that was an absolutely terrible comparison, but that's what we're about around these parts. Moving on to the ride experience, the first drop on Jungle Dragon looks pretty interesting because it's really not like any other GCI drop. You're kind of tilted to the right, and I don't mean that the drop turns. I mean that you're actually banked inward a little bit. Not sure why exactly they did that, but it probably doesn't really affect the ride experience, and I'm sure there is a reason. Following that, Jungle Dragon features somewhat of a back and forth layout pattern where you have a series of airtime moments, then a turnaround, then some airtime moments, then a turnaround, and repeat that a few times, all the while working your way down the hill. I suspect that the max speed on Jungle Dragon might actually not be reached until later on in the layout, because it sure seems like you're constantly gaining speed from the POV. And if you look at another GCI like Gold Striker, that ride has a larger first drop but doesn't hit as fast of a speed. The airtime moments that they threw in there look absolutely incredible for GCI standards, and you even have a rare triple down. Man, some of these moments are just going to be insane in the back row. I can really see why this is considered the consensus 3rd best GCI. Oh, and the 1st and 2nd best will be in part 3, so be ready for that. But back to Jungle Dragon, it's kind of weird because this ride and the park that's in actually used to be in close proximity to Foreigner Street, home of Mine Train, what many of you may know as the Spinning Jesus Coaster. Yep, there it is in all of its beauty. Too bad it closed a few years back though, may you rest in peace. Geez, I feel like I keep getting off track, but you have to understand that a chance to talk about the Spinning Jesus Coaster cannot be passed up. Anyways, from the people that have gone out to ride Jungle Dragon, almost all of them say that it has horrific operations, as I alluded to earlier. A Chinese coaster having 10-minute dispatches, how surprising. But that's really the only negative, as most reviews label it as one of the best wooden coasters they've ever ridden, and that's one thing you cannot take away. Next up, we have our first Jungle Trailblazer layout of the video, and in case you are not aware, there are actually 7 wooden coasters in China named Jungle Trailblazer, but there are 5 different layouts between them. Here we have a set of clones from Fantawild Asian Legend and Fantawild Dreamland Zhengzhou. These are some of the ones that don't feature a corkscrew. They were both designed by the Gravity Group and constructed by Martin and Vleminckx. Jungle Trailblazer at Fantawild Dreamland Zhengzhou opened in 2015, and Jungle Trailblazer at Fantawild Asian Legend in 2018. As for the stats, both rides are 3,199 feet or 975 meters long, 108 feet or 33 meters tall, 54 miles per hour or 87 kilometers per hour, and have a 61 degree drop. All in all, pretty run-of-the-mill stats for a modern wooden coaster. Oh, and they feature Timberliner trains, which is something I should note because there are actually a number of Chinese gravity groups that don't. Now going over to the POV, the ride starts with a simple turnaround into a straightforward drop. Pretty standard, not a whole lot to say, but back row riders will likely be blasted with airtime. Then you go up into the first of 2 outer banked hills that serve as the signature element of the ride, and this will likely provide some awesome lateral airtime. The official name of the element is actually a sidekick, so it'd be really fitting if the coaster was part of a 1-2 punch, but the second best coasters at these parks are a Vekoma family suspended coaster and a Vekoma boomerang, so yeah.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Following the first kickflip, you head straight into another standout element, a turnaround that's banked 90 degrees, and you also have a lot of speed, so this will provide some wicked positive Gs, something you don't find on many wooden coasters. After that, you have plenty of airtime moments as well as a few banked turns thrown in there. In total, Gravity Group says that there are 13 airtime moments on the ride. Along with that, you have some incredible head choppers. Specifically, the one that stands out to me comes at the end where you're flying through that structure. And those supports look close on camera. I'd bet my 4-piece chicken McNuggets that they're even closer in person. Yet another thing I should mention is that on the Asian Legend one, you get to see the city of Nanning all around you, and specifically these two bridges where the architecture is simply stunning. Plus you have the water and all the landscaping, and oh yes, I'm so glad they didn't just go straight into that drop. Really give you a nice chance at taking that view. The Fantasy Dreamland one is a bit less nice. You get to take in that beautiful Chinese smog. Really sets the tone for your visit to China. From the people that have ridden Jungle Trailblazer, there have been a ton of pros like the ones I've mentioned. However, not everything is sunshine and Reese's peanut butter cups, as there have been a number of roughness complaints specifically for the Fantasy Dreamland Zhengzhou version. Richard Bannister said riding in the back was a tactical error, and he collected a whole series of souvenir bruises. He did mention, however, that it proved tolerable up front. The review came from 4 years after the coaster first opened, and the older reviews are definitely more positive, so I assume it's a maintenance issue. The same roughness complaints, however, have not been had for the one at Fantasy Asian Legend, as it is a new ride. All in all, Jungle Trailblazer at Fantasy Dreamland Zhengzhou and Fantasy Asian Legend might be some of the lesser coasters we'll see if you don't like rough rides, but definitely have one of the best wooden coaster layouts out there regardless. Next we have a coaster that is not a clone, Jungle Trailblazer at Oriental Heritage Wuhu. You guys seriously do not understand how frustrating it was trying to sort through all these Jungle Trailblazer rides when I first started researching, because they're all wooden coasters with the similar styles as they're made by the same company, and they all have the same name, but some are clones and some aren't, but I digress. This inverting Jungle Trailblazer is located in the Anhui province a little bit west of Shanghai. As for the stats, the ride is 3,468 feet or 1,057 meters long, 110 feet or 33 meters tall, 57 miles per hour or 91 kilometers per hour, features one inversion, and has a drop at 60 degrees. The stats aren't too crazy, but they're getting to that realm where it's a somewhat large wooden coaster. As the coaster has an inversion, it of course features your standard Gravity Group Timberliner trains designed for comfort that you can find on so many rides like Kentucky Flyer for example. Looking at the area surrounding the ride, it's absolutely gorgeous with all the landscaping and water, and you can definitely tell this is a very nice park, as Oriental Heritage parks tend to be. That's however in stark contrast to the ground directly underneath the ride, which looks like something you'd find at the bottom of Crackhead Joe's swimming pool. I guess that you're probably focused on the actual ride experience though when you're riding, so it doesn't really matter that much. Now moving on to that ride experience, the ride starts just like the previous Jungle Trailblazer with the straightforward, about 60 degree drop that will provide some incredible airtime in the back. The difference with this is that it doesn't have a turnaround to gain speed on, so maybe the airtime won't be quite as good, but it'll still be great airtime. After that, you head into a few more moments of airtime, including a double down. That's followed by the signature element of the ride, a corkscrew. This is one of 5 wooden coasters in the world, all Gravity Groups by the way, to feature a corkscrew. It looks pretty floaty, but to be honest, that's probably a good thing so that it doesn't tear the track to bits. After that, you head to a number of bank turns and airtime moments, including yet another double down. Very typical for a Gravity Group, but this section seems fantastic nonetheless. So far, the pacing has actually been pretty phenomenal, but the only place where it wavers is when it hits this high turn that isn't really banked. The speed just dies for a few seconds, but then it picks it right back up for the last run of airtime hills after going down a drop. The last 2 airtime hills seem abnormally sharp, actually very similar to the Ejector Death Hill in Zip and Pippin, another coaster designed by Gravity Group and constructed by Martin and Vleminckx. Those hills might actually look to be the best part of the ride to me, and then you find yourself slamming into the brakes. Overall, reviews from the people who have gone out to ride have been absolutely glowing, including one from Heartline Coaster, where he praised the airtime and called it a world-class coaster, but that slow section brings it down to ultimately the number 3 Jungle Trailblazer, which is still incredible. All the reviews do highlight one major downside, and I really don't think I even have to say what it is anymore at this point. Personally, I don't think that the high section really bothered me, so I think it looks like the second best Jungle Trailblazer we'll see. And I'm not going to tell you what's the best because I'm edgy like that. The second to last layout of the video is actually from two coasters, a set of clones called Jungle Trailblazer. Like I mentioned, these are a set of clones. The first one opened at Oriental Heritage Jinan in 2015, and the other opened at Oriental Heritage Ningbo in 2016. Just like all the rest of the Jungle Trailblazers, these coasters were designed by Gravity Group and built by Martin and Vleminckx. Yes, in case you're wondering, none of the Jungle Trailblazers are made by GCI. These coasters also both feature timberliner trains, as you might expect. Something I should say is that the one on Jinan looks like it would have a really cool setting because it's surrounded by this river slash canal slash lake thing, but that water looks absolutely filthy. I guess that maybe the setting is really cool if you just wear one of those Happy Meal 3D glasses, but if both the lenses were blue. As for the stats, both rides are 3,264 feet or 995 meters long, 106 feet tall or 32 meters, 55 miles per hour or 89 kilometers per hour, have one inversion, and have a 62-degree drop. The stats that stand out are of course the fact that the ride does have an inversion, a corkscrew just like we saw at the one on Oriental Heritage Wuhu, and the drop is pretty steep at 62 degrees, at least for a wooden coaster. Following the format of how we examine the other coasters, let's next go into the layout. We of course start with that straightforward drop, and now I feel like I'm just saying the same thing for every coaster, but once again, awesome airtime in the back. You next go into two slight turns that are accompanied by airtime hills, kinda reminiscent of the pattern followed on Fjord Flying Dragon. Then you hit that signature corkscrew, and there really isn't a whole ton to say about it other than that it's cool to have an inversion on a wooden coaster. Following that corkscrew, the rest of the layout is pretty much just airtime hill after airtime hill after airtime hill, with the exception of two bank turns thrown in there. There aren't really any laterals following the section before the inversions, just negative G's. But the airtime looks, and this has been echoed by people who have ridden it, remarkably strong for a wooden coaster. The second half also stays very low to the ground, so the pacing is simply phenomenal. From the people who have ridden it, they all of course mention horrific operations, as you would expect. Richard Bannister actually suspected in his trip report that maybe this could be on purpose because they were running one train with the full queue, but they were also selling single ride skip the lines at the entrance for $8 a piece. However, Bannister also echoed what I said earlier about the fantastic pacing and airtime. All in all, this might be the worst Jungle Trailblazer, but that only goes to show how strong these Jungle Trailblazer layouts are, cause this is still a top tier Woodie. And finally, the last coaster of the video and the last Jungle Trailblazer Oriental Heritage Xiamen. I to mention right now, there's even less footage of this ride available than the other rides in this video. Like the only POV other than whatever this abomination is, has these annoying side angles added on which might be a bit distracting, but we gotta work with what's available. I apologize for that in advance. This ride is located in the Fujian province in southeastern China, of course at Oriental Heritage Xiamen like I mentioned. The ride opened in 2017 and as you would expect was designed by Gravity Group and constructed by Martin and Vleminckx. It also features timberliners just like most of the Jungle Trailblazers. I say most, not all though, because we had one covered in part 1, Jungle Trailblazer at Phantom Wild Dreamland Zhengzhou, that had PTC trains. I couldn't find that many stats for this ride, but we do know that it has 3,248 feet or 999 meters of track, it's 108 feet or 33 meters tall, it has 0 inversions and has a drop to brakes ride time of 53 seconds, so not incredibly long, but it isn't a short ride at all. This isn't really related to the ride experience, but the area around the ride I have to say is simply incredible. The amount of man-made nature around the ride is absolutely ridiculous, and you also have some stunning architecture, and it's not like they get lazy as you might expect a Chinese park to do, and only make it nice in certain spots. It's beautiful all around. There's this fantastic shot posted on RCDB from Gavin Jones where you can see the track weaving all around, the trees hugging the track, at times looking like you could almost touch them, then you got the pathway weaving around under the ride, and the Disney level architecture of another ride out in the distance. It's incredible. However, for this to be an elite level ride, it takes more than a good setting, so let's look at the ride experience. You start off by going around the turnaround where you actually gain quite a bit of speed, so you're gonna get absolutely yonked down that drop. The change in direction might even give back row riders fantastic laterals too. Then you go up into the signature element, a 90-degree banking hill which is very similar to the ones found on Jungle Trailblazer at Phantom Wild Asian Legend, like we talked about earlier. This element's kinda like a wave turn, but it's not quite a wave turn. Following that, you have a crazy amount of incredible airtime moments, but what really stands out to me in the first half are the laterals. You may have noticed on the other gravity groups we've discussed that gravity group loves their high banking, but this jungle Trailblazer throws that out the window like me when I see my sister's Taylor Swift CDs. There is this one high bank turn thrown in there, however, that serves as a separation between the first and second halves, and wow, the positive G's look strong with this one. Finishing off the ride, you have even more airtime, laterals, and one absolutely crazy head chopper. I did mention that this thing absolutely flies through its layout so unnaturally fast, almost reminiscent of the RMC Raptors. It also has statistically the best pacing of any gravity group, not just in China but in the world, in terms of feet covered per second. Yes, this has statistically better pacing than the 159-foot behemoth known as Voyage. From riders, this thing gets mixed reviews. Some call it a bit disappointing, while others call it the best coaster they've ever ridden. So I'll have to sometime in probably 2057 get out to China to try it for myself. So that's all we have for part 2. We are done with the Jungle Trailblazers. Thank the heavens. Make sure you guys stay tuned for part 3, where we'll go over the rest of the Chinese woodies, including Python and Bamboo Forest, Time Travel, Wood Coaster, and Wooden Coaster Fireball. Also remember to like and subscribe, leave any thoughts, suggestions, or video ideas down in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.